Anybody can take cuttings, and I'm going to show you my method. This plant is Nicotiana, very fragrant, but not very available. So the best way to bulk up the numbers is to take your own cuttings and have a large fragrant stand of this very choice plant. This plant has got a huge root ball, and although it looks really scruffy now, in here it will break out lots of new shoots, and that's exactly what we want. So I want to reduce it down to about 18 inches. So here's our root ball. This is all really good wood in here. If I chop it there and chop it there, that's going to be my material. Now what I want to do is make sure I just prune back to, that's a nice cut, and that's a nice cut. You can see we've got there's a new shoot. I could just turn that around for you. There. There's a new shoot right here, which will take over that stem. And there's another shoot right there that will come. So this plant is all set now for glory. It doesn't look much, but it will be spectacular. This is our cutting material. Now you don't want the flowers, so we want to come all the way back to there. And then here, we'll just take that off. And then on this piece, we're going to come back to there. So this can now be cut into more cuttings. Firstly, I've got to talk about these. In England, we call these secateurs. In here, in the States, they're called clippers. I've used these for years, so much so that I lost the spring that goes in here, but I've got used to using them like this. If you want to get a nice pair of clippers for a birthday, Christmas, for yourself, these are called Felcos, and Felco make a whole range of them. These are Felco number 2s, there it is. And they can be sharpened, there's replaceable blades, absolutely essential. Next to having a greenhouse, these are probably the number 2 tool of all time. So let's go and continue with our pruning. Get rid of that flower. And we're going to come in here and take that. So, how many cuttings can we get from this? Well, that's going to be a good question. This here will absolutely be a cutting. Don't think, let's try that. Now the reason I cut back some of the leaves is I want to reduce the transpiration and stop the plant from excessively drying out. So that is a perfect cutting, nice and strong, looking good. So we got one cutting. Now then, this is going to be interesting. We can trim this back. I think we might get one out of that. So this is going to become another cutting. Doesn't look like much, but that will grow. That will grow. So there's 2. And here we have the big base. So you always want to cut back to a nice fresh stem where a leaf or a shoot comes out. We'll just reduce that. So you can see what I'm doing here. The lower node is bare. We've got a little shoot that will come out of here, and another shoot that will come out of there. So there's 3 cuttings, moving in the right direction. That's another cutting. This is where the roots will initiate from. Cut cut that back. We'll cut out that piece. And we'll trim that. Yeah, 2. So we got 5. I thought we'd probably have got a little bit more than that, but that's okay. So what we now do, there's our cutting material. This stuff is rooting hormone. Some people love it, some people hate it. I think it gets used incorrectly. If some works, then more isn't necessarily better. So what I do is put a little bit in a cap like that. And then we're going to just settle our compost. Using our trusty sprayer bottle, finger over the end, you just want to dribble a little bit of water in there. You don't want to make it soaking wet. Gets cold, requires a lot of energy for it to heat up. So that little bit of water is going to drain down, and the bottom will remain dry. That's perfectly okay, bearing in mind that our cuttings are going to come about 1/2 to 2/3 of the way down, and that moisture will just keep on going downwards. And then our cutting is, this is the key part. On that cut surface, I tap most of it off. It's just a dusting, the slightest of dusting. I've seen people dip the end of this in water and then get the white powder 1 inch, 2 inches all the way up the stem. You just don't need it. Now this is where it gets interesting. If you were to push this down into the pot, chances are you'd brush off quite a lot of the powder. So if you just make a little thin hole like that with a planting label, you can now push this inside, and there's the next shoot that's going to grow right there. Don't go any deeper, and just scooch that down. It's important that this stem is upright, because when we cover it with a plastic bag, you don't want things sticking out, getting in the way. Now this compost that's got spilt on it, it really doesn't matter. It's no big deal. Now this spraying puts a layer of moisture over the plant, so the humidity immediately on the surface is at 100%. This means that the water inside the cuttings can't dissipate. It can't disappear or evaporate because it's got a layer of water around it. This greatly slows down the drying out process. So there we have 3. Now, given that these 2 cuttings are rather huge, no, they're not huge, they're a good size. I'm going to use just 1 in each. I had thought I would probably get 10. The other 2 plants that I've got, I'm going to leave as they are, and you'll see the difference in height and growth compared to the one that I just pruned. So these are now going to go into these pots. If you leave a lot of green material down here at the base, it can rot off. So take time just to trim it back nicely. Tiniest amount. It's just a dusting. choice plant, worth having, and now I've got a whole bunch more of them. So if it takes you a bit longer, so be it, but it's worth the effort. Now, why did I choose this particular plant? This is just to give you the label for it. Nicotiana, alata, grandiflora. So the grandiflora part indicates it's a large flower. Alata is a common species, Nicotiana is a genus. I have never found this plant available in local stores to me to grow. I've never found it available, so if I can't find it available, I can't buy it. The only way to buy it is to make it. So I bought one, the big one, and then I propagated from that. I expect to have a stand of these with this flower throughout the season. And I mean, I could have as many as 100 flowers out at any one time just in this little stand. And it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. But what I do is I cut the corners off on both sides, just a small cut. Let the air through. And then undo the zipper. Open them up. And then very carefully thread them over. Now, you have to wiggle this a little bit. You want to start on the non-zipper side and just thread it over. Now that's interesting. You can see here that that's not quite gone over, which means that this is a different pot size. There we go. That's a nice fit. So now what we have in here is damp medium, healthy fresh cutting, a little bit of moisture in the compost, and our plants are now in their own little heated environment. So let's do these other two. So this is my propagator. I've used this extensively for many months now. It's had all sorts of plants go through it. And what I have is a heat mat right here that goes down into the base. And then with different foam fillers and blocks of wood, I can raise and lower the height. When you grow stuff in an artificial propagator like this, the distance of the light source down to your plants is really important. Every inch you go further away, there's a severe drop in light. And obviously you don't want that. And what I do is I mist not only the plants, but also the surface. And that just loads the atmosphere with water.